Okay, it's 6:30, and I'd ask everybody to hold the flags back here. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'll call this meeting of the Culver Board of Zoning Appeals to order and ask that the secretary please conduct the call.
Mr. Culver. Mr. Culver.
Present.
Mr. Osborne.
Present.
Mr. Campbell. Mr. DeWitt.
Present.
Mr. Adams.
Present.
I'm Lee Marshall, and we are all.
Also, I'd like to go ahead and take care of the approval of the October 15th minutes. There was one correction, and that was just an address for Emily King, who called in, and we had 1815. It should be 18151 West Shore Circle. And we did correct that in the minutes here. Would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Moved by Mr. McManaway and seconded by Mr. Osborne. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. So we are going to, we do need to sign these. Mr. McManaway, you sign that and take it over to the other two here. So sign it, please. Thank you. We're going to divert from the agenda, and we're going to discuss with Mr. Clevenger, our town attorney, about some questions we have about my minutes here. The variance which we approved last meeting, but we have some problems that's arisen from it, and we're questioning what exactly we can do. We approved the petition 2020-016B for Greg and Alyssa Burns, and we were all under the understanding, I mean, as far as I was concerned, that the house was going to be, we were proving a deck being put on the front of the house, because we talked about, the biggest conversation was about, it had to be there because of where the door was and the stoop was going to stay, and the whole conversation, and I know I was one. We approved it, and then 2 days later saw that the house was torn down, which is a complete surprise to me. We were not informed that this was going to be a tear down and a rebuild. And I felt like we were completely duped because, like I said, one of the things we talked about was the fact that there was going to be a deck put on that house, and it had to be, or they asked that it be positioned that way because of where the doorway was. And if the house was coming down, I don't understand that, and why it was not mentioned that it was a tear down in the whole thing. Does anybody happen to have their copy of that petition with them? I think I left mine at home. Jude. And I will read the petition itself. A petition filed by, no, I'm sorry, the wrong one. Petition filed by Gregory and Alyssa Burns to request a development variance for north side yard setback of 1 foot from the required 10 feet, a front yard setback of 22 from the required 25 feet, and for a maximum impervious of 58% for the standard maximum of 50%. The variance request for the purpose of constructing a 8-foot by 28 feet front porch on an R1 district. The address of the property is 311 North Street, State Street, Culver, Indiana. Says nothing about tearing down the house. I had to look in petition. I got to page 6 before I saw anything about reconstruction on the current footprint. In all the discussing that we had, it was simply about putting that deck or the porch on the front of the house. And I believe, am I correct with the other board members? That was your understanding also?
Yes.
Mr. Hugler, was that your understanding also?
Yes.
Okay. And we approved it thinking it was just for a deck porch to be put on the existing house. Now, Mr. Clevenger, that's why we're asking you exactly how can we proceed with this if we do not want to approve that.
Mr. President, if I could interrupt, we do have Mr. Burns in the back. Maybe he could speak up for himself as to what.
I would like to hear from Mr. Clevenger first.
You're right, Mr. President.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, yeah, I was alerted to this a little bit earlier. And I guess I was wanting to follow through. Was there a site plan as part of the petition? This variance for the
What our site plan, what we had was the present house with a porch on the front of it. I don't have mine with me. I wish I know I left it on my dining room table.
and the site plan was what was presented to the BZA with the discussion for the request for the variance.
Right.
So that site plan would even further, I guess, support your thinking that that's what was being involved. There wasn't anything having to do with a variance that was going to be a new structure in the former foundation. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. And the only thing in red is the porch, and everything else is the current house. I mean, and that's what's showing here. It just shows the porch, front porch would be 20 feet, 5 inch or 20.5 feet from State Street. And that's all it shows on the map. Did not have any other site plan, no, that I saw.
Well, certainly if the BZA was presented with information and acted on information that turns out was not correct, either one way or the other, I think it's within its powers to address that variance.
Mr. Clevenger, just for the record, there was a demolition permit that was applied for and approved before the BZA meeting, and also a building permit applied for and approved before the BZA meeting.
Why wasn't that brought up at the BZA meeting is my big question. If that was known, why, in the whole discussion of that, why wasn't that brought up that it was going to be torn down? Like I said, the site plan
Irrelevant.
just has the present house with the porch on it, and that's all it asked for.
It's irrelevant. What they were asking for was a variance to put the porch on that existing footprint of that building. By right, the only place that they can put that building is on the existing footprint. That's by right. And so now they come to get a variance for the front porch.
I think some wool was pulled over our eyes as far as the BZA goes in this
Right.
whole.
Who do you think did that, Mr. President?
I apologize if you feel that way. We had no intention of doing that. I sincerely
Well,
thought
but-
because
but
we
when
got
we-
the permit, that was probably acknowledged.
Well, Mr. Burns, when we were talking about why you wanted it located there because of the stoop and because the door comes out on that corner,
Right,
we were discussing that whole thing
yeah.
about that. That's why you wanted it there. If you're tearing it down, why was that a problem then?
The building plan that we have has the door there. I thought that was the impression. We submitted a
Did-
building plan.
Did you show us a building plan?
No, I thought that was a separate process. And I apologize for not bringing it in. I would have if I knew that that was pertinent. I sincerely. apologize.
Well, I think it
I was
makes
not
it-
trying to-
well, I think it makes a complete difference if you're tearing something down and rebuilding with this whole thing. I'm completely offended by the fact that it was not brought up in the discussion. Now, you might think it was a slip. I felt like it was wool pulled over our eyes when all 5 of us felt the same way.
And that's my fault. I thought because we had people in this room that were part of the permitting process, that was all.
Well, maybe it wasn't your fault.
It was.
There
it
was
was
a, there was a,
fine. I know that if I should have brought it up, it's not anyone's fault but mine. I apologize for that, and I sincerely did not mean to offend or dupe anybody. I really didn't.
Can I just ask a question, that if you had the design of this house, you know what it's gonna look like, you had the building torn down within hours of us giving that variance, why wouldn't you bring that design with you and show it to us as it was intended, rather than using the existing house with the porch drawn on the front of it?
So
If you had that design, I don't know why you would come to us with the old house with the porch drawn on the front of it.
So the new structure is the exact same footprint. The footprint that I submitted is what we're building. And to be completely honest, the design of the new house, I did myself on Google SketchUp. So I can show you what it looks like. I didn't think that it was pertinent. I thought that I was asking for a footprint change, and I can show you what I picked up humbly myself. I'm proud of it, but that makes one person.
Weren't you asking for the doors,
Mhm.
the deck height and everything would be the same?
Yep.
What I asked was to walk out onto the front porch.
Right. So when you're building your house, whether it's on the same blueprint or not, that's something you can be determined within the construction.
Sure.
Mr. President, do you have Mr. McNeil going to speak up?
Just a second, somebody's talking.
But we could even ask that question because I know that there's gonna be any other construction other than the deck.
I understand that. I apologize. I thought that this was. part of
Right, and I'm not trying to lay blame, I'm trying to get to the bottom of this, so that this will never happen again. And I personally feel that the variance for the front porch, as far as in itself, could be retracted. Not saying you couldn't bring it for again, but to me, right now, I just feel like I'm going forward again, the way something is completely.
I apologize for the situation. I intentionally.
Right, I mean, like I say, it's not a blame thing, but it's just protocols that this board has to follow.
Right.
And if we don't follow that protocol, then there's really no use to this, I mean, everybody.
Right, and I was trying to follow the correct process. That's why we did the demo permit and the building permit before coming here, so that we had kind of trying to follow it in line the way that we're supposed to. And I apologize that it wasn't aware to everyone. We've now made decisions and plans in our building family for a home for our family that is kind of contingent on having the way we
I
got.
appreciate the apology, I appreciate everything else, but that's the same as the process.
Sir.
Mr. McMahon, were you the one that voted against it? Okay, you didn't sign that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may interject again.
Yes.
Jonathan did provide me, I must have provided me 5, but I only had 4 of your findings. And,
Yes,
um,
Mr. Hubler was not with us that night, so.
oh, okay. Well, it sounds to me like what you're suggesting is that if you look at those findings, um, 3 of the 4 of you voted in the affirmative so as to pass and allow the variance. Mr. McManaway, I guess, voted no in item 1 and 3. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is had you had all of the information, 1 or more of you may have not agreed that the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance would result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. What
Exactly.
it sounds to me like what you're saying is we thought we had to go along with the variance because of the stoop situation on the front of the building. If it's going to be torn down and reconstructed, redesigned, item 3 probably it was not supported by that additional information.
Exactly. So,
I apologize for that. We would have built the stoop the exact same way as it was. So I don't see really any difference. Like the new structure would have been the same layout. So I guess my question would be, if someone were to apply for this variance, get it, build a porch, and then 2 years later, tear the house down, they would have rights to build that porch, right? Is that accurate?
Not
No,
necessarily.
not necessarily.
I thought that if it were part of the structure, there were footers there, that is grandfathered in, non-conforming lot.
I really feel that in this case, if we'd known the whole situation, we wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have said that I felt there was a difficulty in you using that present house and having a porch on it would not affect it that much. Not knowing that you were tearing it down, and part of it was because of where the doorway was. That's why I said, well, maybe we can take it over there. I wasn't in favor of going all the way over to the north edge of it. But because of the doorway, I felt like, okay, we'll go that way. If you're building a new place, you can move that doorway anywhere you want. And I don't care if the design is the very same. I can't believe that you designed it the very same way that house is. Now, maybe the floor plan, I don't know, the footprint, but to me, this was just, and maybe it wasn't intent, but I sure don't feel like I would have voted the same way without asking a bunch of questions.
I understand that.
And I would, and I don't, is it correct procedure to call for a motion to rescind this variance or approval of the variance, or what, Mr. Clevenger?
Well, yeah, I mean, if someone wants to make a motion that because of the misleading information or wrong information or whatever the case might be, that would have maybe impacted the board's findings and then the approval or disapproval of the variance, that you would like to, I guess, reconsider that. If you're going to do that, you probably need to do findings again and explain, where you are at that, and probably need to include in those findings under the additional remarks section that I guess the majority or all of the BZA members, approved the previous variance petition based on incorrect information, and with the new information, a strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance, in fact, not result in practical difficulties in the use of the property.
Okay, Mr. DeWitt, you wanted to add something a little bit ago. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we did have somebody talking.
That was the reason I was trying to interrupt you. No one can hear Barry McManaway. He doesn't speak up well enough. He spoke for about 7 minutes and I didn't get any of it. That's why I was trying to interrupt you. Excuse me for that.
Then maybe pull your mask down when you're talking. Maybe that'll help.
Dan, if I could on procedure,
Okay,
I think I sent you, Jim, earlier, I think if they want to reconsider it, it looks to me like we should put it on the agenda for a new hearing next month. If all the members vote in favor of that, then they would basically reconsider it at the next monthly meeting and do another set of findings of fact, like you said. And does that make sense?
Yeah, Jonathan, you're correct. The zoning ordinance sets out that reconsideration of an application, and you do need to follow that. You need to follow that process.
If I could make one plea, this is not, I'm not some millionaire coming to make a vacation house. I'm trying to do something to join this community, and I thought that I followed every step that we were supposed to. I talked to everybody in the offices and filed the process exactly how I was supposed to, and I sincerely apologize if you feel that I tried to dupe you, but I promise you I did not.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Burns.
This is going to happen.
I was not, as all of us on the board, I think, were not very pleased when we saw the house come down 2 days after the meeting. It was like, we've been duped. And for whatever reason, I don't, and if you were the understanding that you didn't need to do that or talk about it, I just don't understand why the board wasn't informed of that.
I apologize if I knew it wasn't public because I had the approved permits, I would have brought it up, and I wish that I would have. I really do.
Yeah, I do too, because it's going to put a delay on things right now.
I know, and it's
Does anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you can make that motion, but if you look at that reconsider of an application process, it says upon receipt of a written request for reconsideration, you can make the motion, but you probably ought to have that put into writing so that you can make that a part of the record. And then you're supposed to schedule a public hearing to consider whether there were sufficient grounds for reconsideration. So you've got to take that step at your next meeting. And then if, depending on what you decide, whether there were sufficient grounds, then you would, follow through with the next step.
So the motion tonight, Jim, would just be whether or not to schedule a public hearing to review that, right? I think
To review, to reconsider the application, that's correct.
But we cannot rescind the application.
Not until you make a determination that you have grounds for reconsidering it, and then, going forward. Now, I don't know what the status of his building permit is or whatever else. I guess the demolition has already been done. I went by there today myself and saw that that's the case. I think the petitioner would be at risk if he was proceeding with construction and a deck that was based on this variance that may or may not be reconsidered and may or may not be approved the second time around.
I have a question. Good, you're gonna do. As far as each wanting to go ahead with the house, I mean, is there there's no consideration as far as that even being considered? It's just a deck because of the variance that we approved. But whether we rescind it, table it to review, it's still not going to stop him from proceeding with his house.
Well, it's just according to which, and this is one of the things we have this for, because it says if they're going to change the height of the house,
correct,
then they have to come to the BZA also. Am I reading this correct?
That's, sorry, long emails and lots of explanations there, but I think what happened was, I know Chuck and I had talked about a couple of these, and there were different versions of that section of the ordinance. And I think in Chuck's book, he may have had the draft, and I know I had one in one of my books too, that, I don't know, Barry's on plan, and was when this happened. Dan, I don't know if you were on when it happened or not, but the Plan Commission had approved it and sent it to town council under the version that no, as long as it stayed on the same footprint, they could actually increase the height without BZA approval. This was last summer. When council got it, it got rejected with that language and the language was changed. However, we had a version of the ordinance that still had that incorrect language in it. And I know Chuck and I had used that at times and probably reviewed this one and one other and mistakenly informed them that they could do that based on that language. I went back after discussions with some of the plan commission members Tuesday and dug through minutes and the actual ordinance that the council signed off on, which is a text version versus this version that we post online, and it's in our binders, and realized that they didn't match up. So, and that was something I sent to Jim for, again, his advice on if Chuck and I had relied on that, even though it was incorrect, and advised a couple permits that way. I know how we've handled that in the past, but I defer to you, Jim, if you have any recommendation on that.
Yeah, and as to that issue, I think, I mean, we can't tell the landowner one thing and then, find out that, it's really something else. So I don't know how we can at this point go back and especially him having, this far into the project and so forth, say, oh, by the way, now you got to come back to the PA for a variance of a height provision on this thing. I think that's our town of Culver's screw up. I don't know whatever, but we can't, if it's not well publicized and well known, we can't expect a landowner to comply with something that's using like that.
It was our mistake, not theirs.
Yeah.
Mostly.
So I remember this coming up before the council, and I know that they wanted to put the decision back on the BZA for these situations where a building was coming down, it was going to be rebuilt on the same footprint, and there was a request to build it higher, add a second story, third story, whatever the case might be. And that was the decision of the council rather than just to allow the building to be done any height less than the 35-foot restriction that's already there. So we need to make that revision, make it clear going forward the situation. But I don't think we can hold this landowner to that rule that wasn't well.
So then, Mr. Adams, that leaves us at Mr. McManaway's original point of the construction can continue while the reconsider application works itself out in the coming meetings. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes, I believe you're correct, Mr. Hubler. Would anybody like to make a motion? If we put this on the December for reconsideration of this variance.
Is there anything I could do to give you the information you want in December now? I don't want anyone to feel offended. I want to move forward and feel welcome in this community and feel like I did the right thing by you all. And I'm not going to walk away from here tonight feeling like I did the right thing for you all if I don't offer that.
And I appreciate you offering that, but I believe, well, I know how I would vote right now if I revoted, and it would be not to approve it. But I think we need to have some time to think about it, and then we also have to post it.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Mr. Burns, I would just suggest to you, all the meetings that we have are recorded and posted on YouTube.
Yeah.
I would suggest to you to go back and watch your presentation. It's about an hour in to the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting from last month. And you state when you start that you want to put a new porch in your existing house. And in all the questioning back and forth around the stoop and the site from the alley, there were so many opportunities for you to say, well, it's irrelevant, we're tearing the house down. Well, okay, but this is a new build. It could have almost been a throwaway comment, but it was almost that you carefully avoided ever saying that you were building a new house and it was gonna be a tear down. And I'm just saying, watch it, knowing that that's how, I've watched it 4 or 5 times to try to make sure I wasn't jumping to conclusions about what you were saying. And just pay attention to the language that you use. That's all I'm saying, and then
Yeah.
you'll see maybe where we're coming from.
Absolutely. I'll
You know?
watch it. And to be honest, we had a demolition permit, so I never would have thought that I could come here and dupe you. We had already been confirmed that we could demolish the house.
We don't care about demolition.
And I know that now.
Honestly,
I didn't know that because I worked with Chuck and Jonathan and you guys are in the
Me and
room, so I
myself.
assume that it's the same process, right? So I really am sorry. And I understand that it probably does seem that way. And I wish that I could go back.
you've got 2 members here that are on the board of zoning and on the planning commission.
So did you see that?
And the planning commission did not know about a demolition plan or permit on that property. The planning commission didn't know anything about whether a site plan was even presented to the building commission. Because that's why we had no idea, that's why we have 2 planning commission members on this board here. Because it keeps both boards informed of what's going up in that, and within our zoning. And no members of the planning commission or members of the BZA had any idea that the house was demolished and a new house was going up.
So, Kurt, I guess, help me understand that, because then I think, what's the point of me going through the permitting process? That's why I think I assumed that you would know that.
But I
Because it is
feel
important, right?
the fault would fall on you as far as the clarification.
Sure.
I feel, and I'm not trying to throw darts here, don't get me wrong, I'm just trying to put where it can be correct.
Yes.
I think the building commissioner here decided things about why he would think it would be all right, and he would recommend it going in. But it was never, the building commissioner never even presented to the board of zoning fields as well. And I don't know why that was not ever brought up.
I think we both probably assumed that it was not.
Well, we're not under the job of assuming anything,
I agree.
but we go by what we're presented. And I feel like we were restricted on finding the whole information, and that's the whole problem. And it's not even a matter whether I voted no or yes. It's a matter of I wasn't presented with the information.
Yeah. I understand that. And I can't go back in time.
I mean, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. DeWitt.
I myself, and I feel like to be in this variance would still make more sense and then be represented after we review all of the information. And then could be.
Well, I think that's the point of the reconsideration hearing, Barry, is basically it's a chance to rehear the whole case and look at new facts. So,
Right, and as far as
yeah.
Mr. Clevenger said, as far as.
and we would advertise that.
It actually could have been changing the vote as far as.
Yes.
And I'll
Which that was
speak.
the reason for my
And
thinking
they-
about rescinding, because then it would actually be revoted.
Yes,
I'll speak selfishly. We made decisions and plans and purchased windows and doors and concrete and all of this to do it the way that we were approved to do it. And so selfishly, I really don't want this to be prolonged because this is my life savings. Like, my wife and I have been dreaming of this forever. And now it feels like we're just gonna always look at it from now on and be like, that's the house that could have been the one that we really loved. That's the one that we dreamed about, but it's just not quite how we thought we were gonna have it. And we've fallen in love with this idea. And I thought we did everything the way we were supposed to. I thought we followed every rule, we called everybody, we tried our best. I'm the one that's been duped now.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Burns, I really do, but I don't think your dreams can be all wrapped up in a porch.
It has implications on the footprint of the rest of the house. If we then set everything back, or we have to send the windows and doors back and we have to change the concrete plan, like, it is still thousands of dollars.
But you want it correct.
Yeah, and I thought that we followed the correct process.
You want to make sure you have the authorization.
Which I
Right,
received
by
the impression that we
for
did.
zoning and for the building ban.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's delays. Now, I worked in construction several years myself. And there has been times that it has had to stop due to different reasons.
Yep.
And homeowners, the property owners that are building these houses, and we're talking $600,000 houses, $1.5 million houses. These people had a deadline, they wanted that house.
Yep.
And it was still stopped due to process.
Yeah, I wish I had that kind of money.
And I'm just showing you it doesn't make a difference what kind of money. If you had a whole lot more money invested in it, you'd be even more sorry that it had to wait. But my point is, things have to be done right.
I really thought that we followed every step. We called everybody, had multiple phone conversations
Right.
about making sure we were following every step the right way.
Right.
Sorry, did you decide that?
One of our people, no problem.
Well, I think we need to move along here. Mr. DeWitt, you had a comment you wanted to make?
No, other than I think Barry kind of went around it, but he can go ahead and build the house on the exact footprint that he had. And that's what Mr. Clevenger said. So the only thing that he has come back for is for the porch, correct?
Correct.
So he can go ahead and continue his construction, putting the foundation in and doing all that. And the porch would be the other thing. But Mr. Clevenger, I think you probably heard him say that now he has a financial hardship on this whole process. And just for the record, Mr. President and Mr. Plan Commission person, no one on any of those boards gets any building permits, as to you never have. If you want copies of those, it's easy. All I can do, I can add your email onto the list. But it's never been a problem before since we've been doing this system. And so, Jonathan, if you want to get the names of whoever wants building permits in the Culver jurisdiction, we can send that to everybody if that's what you want.
This is Jim Clevenger again, and I guess a comment that I would have is about the financial difficulty. It seems that that's sort of at the petitioner's own doing, and I'm not sure how much sympathy that may garnish with the BZA, but just a thought.
Yeah, understood.
I understand that. I think we made our decisions based on the understanding that we thought we had followed the correct steps and had approval. So I understand that that's not accurate.
It seems like we're entering in the area of the actual reconsider moment. And so I agree with our Mr. President to either put a motion on this or move on and go to our next business here. Thank you.
Anybody like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that we move this to next month and to review all the findings that we meant to go back over the findings. I'll make that motion.
The motion was to request reconsideration of the petition and of the decision and to schedule a public hearing for the next BZA meeting. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you, Barry.
Yeah.
Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second that.
Mr. Osborne seconded it. Any further discussion? I guess we could just do this by vote. How do you vote on the motion?
How many people are on the team's meeting? If there's, you ought to probably do a roll call vote.
We are. Mr. McManaway?
Yes, aye.
Mr. Osborne?
Yes.
Ms. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Hubler?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we approve that motion 5-0, and it will be on the December 17th meeting. So we review case number 2020-16B.
there
And we will,
contact information where I can reach out to talk to you each to figure out what I can do to help you feel that I'm trying to do this right and I'm trying to do right by the town and by my family? Who can I talk to before the 17th to try to make this right? Because I don't want anyone to feel offended.
well, and the thing of it is, we can't meet as a group with you unless it's open meeting. I mean, we can talk individually with you, and I appreciate, I'm not feeling, and I'm feeling your wish that it hadn't happened, but I think it has happened, and we need to reexamine this, because I think it is definitely going to change some of our votes. And unless you can convince us otherwise on the 17th. But this is obviously just for the porch. And if you know, there's lots of things you can look at if you realize it's going to be reconstruction. I just one of the things I wanted to mention here was there was a metal carport back there that is now gone.
That was gone when we purchased the property. There's a concrete slab there still, but that was never there in our time of ownership.
Well, and part of the thing was impervious ground. Did that include that carport? There's lots of things we could have asked about
That's
that.
under the carport because the concrete slab's still there. The impervious does include that, yes, sir.
But and that's what I'm saying. That's why we need to know this if it's coming down. So we.
Yeah, and that's, I think I included the site survey because it has the exact impervious on it. And that's where I did my calculations from. That is exactly what will be impervious on the structure. And I submitted the same thing with the building plan and with the demo permit. Yeah. Thought I was being consistent.
See, at that point, we didn't know any of that was coming down. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where we stand, and we need to move on with our meeting here.
I just want to say one thing. You know, we made some concessions to you about the width and all that.
And we did.
I think what you need to do is you really need to think about what you come back with us, what your plan is going to be. And
Yeah.
because as you get the feeling here, it wouldn't pass. So I think you have to go back and make some modifications on what you want to do and what you want to present to us in a way that we're going to say, that's going to work.
And I guess I'm looking for recommendations on that.
Right, well,
Because I
that's,
can't tell if you just want me to give something up for the sake of giving something up.
That's, no. And we've got to move on because we do have another petition here.
but, you know, maybe you need to get back with Chuck and talk to him. I'm just going to give you some
I
suggestions.
appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, the petition for the Kim Cook, petition 2020-015B has been tabled until January. I think everybody got that information. So now we'll move on to petition 2020-018B.
Mr. Chairman, may I interrupt? This is Jim Clevenger. Do you need me to hang around on this meeting?
I don't believe so, Mr. Clevenger. Thank you for your information and for
Okay.
leading us.
I'll excuse myself and leave the meeting. So good luck.
It's good to have you here, but hopefully you won't have to be here again for a long time.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hi, Jim, Mr. Day.
Hello.
Okay, Mr. Easterday.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I'm here to present a petition for an East Shore Lane project. And I'm not being facetious here at all. This is very serious business, but I want to be very clear. We are intending to tear down and start over. And the reason we're intending to do that is because we've got some major mold, water issues with the project. If you look at my page 8 of the materials that I submitted, you can see some of our water issues. And in fact, there's water just about surrounding that area, and we're looking to go back that way. So what we'd like to do is to tear down the building, to leave the same setback on the south side, and to also add to the north side, which would not be. And Oh, do they want color?
Sorry.
No, I saw it in color. It looks a lot different color.
Oh, I was gonna say, I gave it to you in color, I gave you
Well, I got
12
that.
copies of it, yeah. So that's the direction we're wanting to go. I don't want to extend your meeting to any great length, but on the street side, we're 22 feet off the street. Variance requirements or rear yard setback for accessory structure is 10 feet, so there's no issues there. Putting it on the north side, there's no issues because it's coming into the middle of the lot. So the only variance we're asking for is south side yard setback. You might ask, well, why can't you move it into the center? There's two major reasons and probably more. We've got some underground issues there in the center of that property, although they're not on septic anymore. They're on the former East Shore Lane septic, and I don't know what it's called now since they connected to the town. But they are on that, but we still have the underground issues there. And we think that would give us some trouble if we started rooting around in there, especially considering the water. I guess the second variance we're asking for, Chad Leap, the Skyline Builders, who's working on this project, indicated that there's a good possibility he can get it in the 16 feet, but he asked me to ask for another foot just in case he's a couple, 3, 4, 5 inches over, because he wants to come up enough to get the slab out of the water. That's basically where he's at. I guess I'll entertain questions so we don't run this too late.
Jim, is that building next to it, is that the neighbors?
Yes, that's the neighbor.
Okay.
And I might indicate and answer that both the neighbor to the south and the neighbor to the north have been contacted, and neither one of them have any objections to this. That's Mr. Stars.
And that's where that 2.5 foot
Well,
goes?
we're 2.5 from the property line, and then he's probably another foot, maybe 2.5 on his side.
Okay.
Part of the problem I have with this, Jim, is the fact that it's not just a storage accessory building, it's actually a small house. And you know, we already have a home on that lot. And we're supposed to, you know, and now we're enlarging a existing building that now has a bathroom and a bedroom
Well,
and a small porch and a garage.
It had all that before. It had all that before. So we're not changing.
And I realize that's grandfathered in, it's
Yeah,
been
we're
there
not
for a
changing
while.
the use at all.
But to enlarge it and add another bedroom, I have problems with that. And and I don't like how close it is next to the building next door without looking at it. And I mean, there's like maybe a foot between the eaves it's very, very close.
If we could move it, maybe a foot or two to the north.
I don't know. That's the two things. I mean, in this picture here, I mean, it almost looks like it's all one building.
Yeah.
It looks like it's connected. And I realize it's the angle it's taken from.
That picture is incorrect because I looked at it forever and then finally we hired a surveyor to speak up because it looked to me like we were encroaching on our 10 feet on the street, and we're not. We're actually 22 feet off the street. So that overlay is really weird.
Mr.
Is
Lee,
East Shore Lane considered a street?
East
Is
Shore
it a-
Lane is a private drive.
That's what I thought.
this is JD Hubler. Mr. Leap, could you share a little bit how the new structure will prevent the hardship of the water issue?
Sure. Basically, we've got to get water going away from the structure. And as you can see from the photos that Jim shared, that's not the case when they get the heavy rains and it's going in. If you look on the one picture that is facing the road, you can kind of see that air conditioning unit there. And that's a crawl space access right beside that, and everything, I mean, everything just goes into that crawl space.
Falls right down there.
Yeah, and so we've got to get that structure up, or it's going to continue to be an issue.
Okay, the reason why I asked is when I was out there the other day, it already looks like it's 8 or 9 inches up above the ground. Not the crawl space, obviously, but the remainder of the structure that the boathouse or whatever it is built on is actually up off the ground by about 8 inches. And so I was wondering how much more that would actually come up, but I didn't. When I saw the air conditioner in the crawl space, I didn't realize that that's where the water was going in.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue, and is getting into the crawl space, but also we would, like I say, we would get that up where we could raise the dirt level there to shed everything away. There's drains around there, but they're not. We've got to get it going to those drains, and we've got to get the structure up and able to do that.
Why is it necessary to add another bedroom onto an accessory structure like that?
Well, I guess the addition would be within the setback. So I don't know that it's a necessity. It was something that while they were doing the construction, they wanted to take advantage of.
Sure.
I guess maybe a question to the planning commission members here. You know, this isn't the first time we've had something like this or variation on a theme of this come up before us. If you remember the one 3-car garage where they just wanted to take a section of it. They weren't changing it, the footprint at all. They just wanted to take one section of it and convert it. And that was turned down because the plan commission apparently doesn't want people building more living space. It's kind of like what Dan was saying, and it kind of creating another almost little house on a property that already has a main structure. Is that similar to Dan's questions are almost exactly what I was going to ask. You know, I guess I had sort of two things. I thought they were so close when I went out and looked. To me, the gutters of those two buildings were almost overlapping each other. But I thought, okay, they could tear it down and just leave it the same size and move it away a little bit, move it more toward the center of the property. But is that something that either of the planning commission members responded to when you saw this? Because it's a variation on a theme of the other property that came before us with kind of a similar class.
I think the other property that we're talking about have a bathroom in it.
Right, that's true.
And they wanted to add that. This already has one, but I can't, like I said, I have problems. I'm like you. I'd rather see if it's going to be, leave it the same size and move it over, allow them to do that just to give them some space rather than remodel the same place where it is. But I can't, I don't see adding another bedroom onto it.
Mr. President,
Pardon me?
Mr. President, could I speak?
Yes. Is that Mr. DeWitt?
Yes.
Yes.
There are a couple more issues that that haven't been addressed yet. Number one, this is new construction. The height should be able to be met without a problem. You know, that's just put a different pitch on the roof, and that height will come down. The second thing is that it's built over property lines right now, and we can't allow a building to be built over property lines. There are, I believe, 5 parcels out there, Chad, that this is built around, and I would want to see those combined before we get a building permit wherever we let it set.
So and this is showing it all on lot 1. You're saying it would not all fit on lot 1?
It doesn't all sit on lot 1.
Lot 2, I guess it would.
Yeah, it doesn't all sit on there. And we've got to have more than that 2 feet. When you build something, we've never allowed, I won't say never, but less than 5 feet to be able to get around the building and maintain it has always been something that we've looked for.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to maintain your property. You got to maintain your buildings from your own property, not from your neighbors.
Correct. I'm a big gun on this. I always go to the east. And so we can maintain the property because we can walk around it because we got those eaves there. But here again, if the board would be amiable to us moving it a foot or 18 inches or something like that, we can probably do that. If we move it too far, we're going to be into our other issue. And then also what Chuck just said, we're going to be moving across the parcel line. He doesn't like us to do that.
Well, that's
Well,
why,
and we're in the process, we're in the process of consolidating all that into one lot.
Okay, good, great.
you are in the process of doing that?
Yes.
Well, with all due respect, if we've had several cases where we've got it approved with plan commission after we got the variance approved.
That is correct.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But wasn't there like a condition that had to be
Well,
done before we built,
there was a request,
or addition to it?
no, there was a request that we do it, and we did.
Yeah, I think if the owners usually agreed in a public meeting to do it, I mean, we've always said we would hold the certificate of occupancy or something like that at the end until we had it in place. And I think we've done it a few times and it hasn't been an issue before, but.
You're saying approve with conditions.
Right.
We approve this, but you
With
have to
conditions.
consolidate.
Yes.
That's what I was talking.
Yes, I think we've done that a couple times.
On the east elevation picture or drawing, it shows 2 garage doors, I believe, that I see. And that doesn't show it on the floor plan. Looks like one garage door would be right where the bath is. Am I looking at that correctly?
Correct. That is basically a false door.
But it's gonna look like a garage door.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to see the thing moved away from the property line, but I'm not liking to see it being enlarged to have a second bedroom. That's just my own.
I'm with you, Dan, on that. I don't understand why we're adding a bedroom to the garage.
That's been there. That, like, if you look at the one side is the existing.
The addition has been there?
Well, no. You're asking why we're adding a bedroom to the garage, or why we're.
And the guest house.
We realize there's already a garage or a bedroom
We already
there.
realize it's a garage and there's a bedroom there.
Okay.
The adding another bedroom is my problem, I guess, one way of saying it, but I don't understand the hardship as far as accessory structure becoming more primary than it should be. You can't have 2 primary structures with 2 living residences on the same lot. And I think when you have a 2-bedroom accessory structure, it's pretty well looking like an extra primary structure.
What we've done in the past on several occasions is to record an affidavit with the recorder's office that it will never be used for a rental unit, that it will only be used for single-family residential. We've done that on several occasions.
It's been done on 2 primary structures too, and I did agree with that.
Are we starting to talk about 2 different permits or issuance here in terms of the variance for the setback? But then are we also talking about a separate thing of a use for this accessory structure? Knowing that if this second bedroom wasn't there, would we be still talking about the setback from the south side of the property? We would be. And now I'm just wondering, as I look at page 82 in our ordinance, and the fact that Mr. McManaway is right. I mean, it says clearly that the accessory structure is subordinate to the use of the primary building. And so if now we're talking about use of a second bedroom impeding kind of our discussion here, I'm wondering about, like, do we need to separate these two things, or can we talk about them together as one?
Well, they have a right to rebuild that building on the same footprint because it's
Correct.
grandfathered in with
Correct.
a bedroom and a bathroom. What we have to approve is if they're going to move it, we'd have to approve it if it's not on the same footprint, or if they enlarge it, the footprint, which is what we're doing here, or talking about here. It's already being used. It's grandfathered in to have the bathroom and the bedroom there now. And they can remodel it on the same footprint or redo it, put a new foundation in.
Are they restricted on the height then? If they go
Not under the present ordinance.
not under,
Well,
That's
Yeah.
not true. So
That's not true.
there was a error in how it was printed. If you go back and look at what was actually passed by the council, the correct version is, yes, it has to stay the same height that it is. Asked me 2 nights ago and you would have got a different answer, as you know.
Well, we're going to discuss that a lot, I'm sure.
Sure.
I think what we were looking to do, to be perfectly candid with you folks, he's right. We can rebuild it on the same foundation, and we can keep the living unit, and we can keep the use. But we thought it would be better for the property and better for the neighborhood if we could expand it just a little bit and possibly move it just a little bit, then it would seem to be a better situation. Because Dan has said to me many, many times over the years, I like it when you decrease the non-conformity. That's the word you use.
That is the purpose of the comprehensive plan as well.
Yep.
And so moving it away from the line is, I mean, an improvement.
I guess I just asked Chad, I'm looking at you, Chad, could we move it a foot or 18 inches or something like that?
well, I think if you're planning on, I think it's, how do I say this? No. We would have to approve of you moving it 2 feet, even as is, right?
Right.
Even if you left it the same size, because you're not using the same footprint.
Correct.
You're just moving that
Right.
footprint. So we'd still have to approve that.
Right.
But that doesn't go hand in hand saying, well, I'll approve that if we do this. Yes, I would love to see that moved. But if it means we're gonna have to add this extension on, I'm not for that.
I guess that's kind of the give and take I'm looking at,
Yeah.
because we can rebuild it right where it is right now.
Chad, can I ask you a question? There was reference to something, it wasn't really said, but implied about there was maybe the septic existed in this yard at some point, but now they're on the town septic. When I went out and looked at the property, it seemed like there was just plenty of room to move that non-conforming structure over. And wouldn't interfere with the sidewalk, it wouldn't, what exactly is the quote problem with that yard that makes it have a water issue that's beyond just, drainage, maybe it needs to be landscaped differently? Is there something existing under there?
Did you say Chad?
Yes.
Did you say me? Okay, sorry, I didn't hear that. I guess,
Sorry, Mr. D.
well, when it downpours, that's just a low spot and it takes a while to get that drainage away. So there's some things that we will do with the drainage as well. But ultimately, the elevation of that structure is where it is. And when you have the rains like that, we've got to, basically the drain is not, where it's draining to is not low enough to get the water away to stay out of that crawl space.
Okay, but there's nothing, I can't remember who said it at this point, but there's nothing structural underneath the ground that's preventing you from moving the building. Nothing structural that you hit or,
I guess
the north, in other words, that would be a hardship.
I have
Chad,
not
this
investigated
is-
that.
Chad, this is Loyal. One thing I
Ms.
just
Wilson?
want to correct. Yes, Loyal Wilson, I hope it's okay for me to participate. I just want to correct one thing regarding the site, just so that we're entirely factual. We still are on the septic system, but we do plan on connecting, of course, to the city water as soon as that system is available to us. So temporarily, we're on the septic system, and we will convert as soon as we can do it, just to do the right thing by the lake. So I just wanted to correct that. I'm not sure if it would bear on anybody's judgment, but there is a septic system there now. The other is the reason for wanting to expand to the north is that Margaret and I simply have a young family. And our young family have young families. So we have 4 daughters. 3 of them live up on the East Coast. 1 lives in Chicago. We like to try to get them to the lake together. And between the 4 daughters, who are now in their 20s and 30s, we have 5 grandchildren so far. So for us, we can put a couple back there or an individual, but it would be nice to be able to put Margaret and Sam with their twins and 3-year-olds, so they have 3 under 3. It'd be nice to be able to put them back there. We certainly have no intent to ever rent it or spin it off. There's not a kitchen back there. Don't even plan on putting a TV back there because we view the lake as a place where families get together, not where they go off and sit in the rooms. So that's the reason for the request. I did not know of the bias against expanding a building like that. The reason why I thought it may be an easy request is the building is non-conforming, but the addition itself does not affect that non-conformance. We're not extending the building towards the road or towards the lake. We're not, what is non-conforming now remains non-conforming, but what we put in, we'd have the right to do if the building were in a different location. Anyway, it would be a huge benefit to us and our family. I understand you have larger issues to deal with and objectives and different game plan. I just thought it might be helpful if you knew really our thought process going into it. The hardship is the water. We have a son-in-law who stayed back there last summer, and he had an adverse reaction to it in terms of an allergic reaction. So we do have to address that issue, and we would like to be able to accommodate our grandchildren back there as well. Anyway, that's the background. I hope it's helpful. And thanks for considering our petition, by the way.
Mr. DeWitt, I have a question.
Yeah.
If this building was an accessory structure with 1 bedroom, was not located there, and a non-conforming, would it be considered non-conforming because it is a second living area on the same lot? And therefore, if they enlarged it, would they have to come to us for a variance? Or would they not have to?
I believe they would have to. You
I
have,
think so too.
there's a couple there's more than one non-conformity. You've got the placement of it, making it non-conforming, but it's a non-conforming use. To me, I think once that comes down, then that use goes away. But that's just an opinion, and I'll take your leadership on that.
Well, and I feel like it's because it's a second structure, living structure on the lot, that it would be non-conforming. And if they wanted to enlarge it, they couldn't just do it because of the setbacks. They'd still have to come for a variance.
I agree. Once the building's down, that nonconformity of a living space is gone. Would you agree?
I think he's talking about two different things. The use is there, and the use stays, it's a non-conforming use. The question you're asking is whether or not, if it weren't within the 10-foot side yard setbacks, whether or not we have to come before you for a variance to expand it.
And that's what Mr. Wilson was alluding to
Yeah,
there.
and-
That if it wasn't located there, they could add on.
And
That's why I asked that
And I'm
question.
gonna be totally honest with you, I've argued with Russ Mason a dozen times over this, and I say you don't. Russ Mason did. The one that I'll never forget was down there beside the city hall to put a wood stoop on the back of a house. He said that they had to have a variance, and I said, no. The statute says, the ordinance says, if you increase the non-conformity, and you're not increasing the non-conformity unless you would go down through that 10-foot setback. See what I mean? But I'll be totally candid. I never convinced Russ of that.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking Mr., because Russ is not building commissioner anymore.
I understand.
And that's why I was asking Chuck what his opinion is.
If you look,
I feel like if
if you look at page 155, the famous 155,
Oh,
it
not that
says,
page again.
what?
that's the one we just saw.
I know.
I've got copies
Right here.
Yeah,
It says,
right.
do not increase the non-conformity. And we're not increasing the non-conformity. If we go out in the middle of that lot and add on to a accessory structure, that we're not increasing the non-conformity.
I don't disagree with what Mr. Easterday is saying per se, because when I first looked at this, I was like, oh, this is kind of brilliant because they're not increasing the non-conformity, they're building out in a totally different direction. My issue was more, the planning commission didn't want to encourage that type of additional living space that made kind of little houses on lots that already had homes on them. And so I agree with you about not increasing the nonconformity, but to me, the issue was more that they were adding additional living space, which was something it seemed that planning commission was pushing us to discourage. And that's why then I thought, well, if they could make it less, less non-conforming by moving it and still making it the same size that it was. And it would be off of that border or that lot line, but not be any bigger necessarily.
Right. Let me reiterate what I've ever said before. Like if you've got a non-conforming setback from one side or the other, but if you increase the length of that non-conformity, you are adding non-conformity to that line.
Right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. McManaway is correct. Absolutely correct.
You just said you were correct. It's Chuck saying you were
I
correct.
couldn't hear you.
Yeah,
That's correct, I agree.
And,
But see, we're not doing that on this one.
but now on the other subject we were talking about, as far as the non-conforming use of this building, if it was torn down, as Mr. DeWitt said, it was torn down, the use is gone. As far as non-conforming use, you can't add that non-conformity back to that when it's rebuilt. And I think that's what Chuck was trying to get the point across. Is that right, Chuck?
That is correct. Well put, Barry.
Right. So, the other thing I want to add to this is by adding this proposed addition, you're not creating non-conformity anywhere as far as the setback. But you are adding a non-conformity use to this property because it's already there, but you're still using it, all right, for the same purpose.
Right.
Now, my point is here that I'm trying to get to is I understand Mr. Wilson as far as what he wants to do. I mean, I can go on with this. I've got 20 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren. I live in 1,100 square foot house. Now, Christmas, we had every single child, grandchild, and great-grandchild there in 1,100 square feet. But that's just going to make a point on my part. But if you were,
Again, bless you.
I appreciate what you're saying. in the world. But by adding this addition that is going to continue with the non-conforming use, and as he said, we could get a notary for your assurance that you would never use it to rent, whatever. But if it's ever sold, now once this property is sold, and it will be sold under the same circumstances and still used under the same nonconformity, and we have increased it to be passed on to the next owner if we add this on. So I think that's another thing we need to discuss as well between members of this committee. So I think we've got several issues here that come up just by the problem. But I don't understand, does the proposed addition doesn't help the drainage problem, does it? I mean, as far as we got the drainage problem, but moving the building, I didn't ever understand as far as what can we do to correct the drainage by doing whatever.
Chad, this is Chuck.
Page 155 for a second. It does say no such non-conforming uses shall be enlarged or increased, nor extended to occupy a greater area of land than was occupied in the effective date of this ordinance. I think that says right there, if it's non-conforming use, you can't make it bigger.
Well, without variance, that's why we're asking for the
Yeah.
variance.
Right, but that was my question of Mr. DeWitt. I said, if that was not sitting there, could they add on to it? Because it is being used as a, the use is not correct with an
Well, the
existing
use
residence.
is single-family residential.
Right, but we're not supposed to have two of them on one
Well, no,
lot.
that's not a use issue, that's a development standards issue. I think you're confusing the two.
No.
So the use of this whole property, and it's not changing, and it's not non-conforming, is basically single-family residential in your lake district.
And
That's the use.
what do you call it, Josh? But
I call that single-family residential in a lake district.
so how can you have two residentials on the same property?
That's a development issue. Just like you guys have been arguing about how many garages you can have and how many mailboxes you can have. That's a development issue. That's not a use issue.
So where's the development issue be resolved?
Well, hopefully, like you granting us a variance.
So you would set precedents in some way or another that we would
I have
allow.
to say, I do kind of see it the way Mr. Easterday sees it, but it still doesn't make me feel like I want them to expand the building. I want them to leave it the same size and move it.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I actually agree with the way Mr. Easterday is interpreting it, because I see it the same way about not increasing the non-conformity by extending to the north. But I think if you're gonna technically use development standards, I don't like the idea of increasing the amount of space of the building and allowing more people to be able to live there, despite a really great reason for wanting to do it. Because I just don't think it's where the planning commission wants us to go. But, ideally, I'd like to see the building moved off of the lot line farther.
Curious piece of history about the house, if you don't mind my sharing it. I inherited it from my mother, probably around 1991. And I don't know if any of you remember the old cottage, but the old cottage was 2.5 feet from the lot line. And it was right on the lot line the entire length of the house. We had a fire in, it would have been around 1998. And I don't know if any of you remember it. Some of you may have been on the volunteer fire department and come and seen our house at the time and gone through it or climbed on top of it to put the fire out. And we looked at restoring the house where it was. That was impracticable. So I don't know if this bears today, but I hope we'll get some credit for the fact that not only did we move it so that it was fully compliant with the nearest point being the southwest corner, but we also moved the front
Southeast.
further over. So southeast corner, yeah, southeast corner. So we also moved the front over to further alleviate the lot line and provide better sight lines from both the road and from the lake, and to alleviate really what was probably a hardship for our neighbors. In doing that, we have a pie-shaped lot. And had we, um, kept it straight to the lake and built in the same place, we could have done an attached garage to it. But we didn't do that. And now with the orientation of the house being sort of crooked to the lot, we don't have the ability to attach a garage and put living space in it, which would have been, I think would have been possible under the code. In any event, I thought, number one, being in the zoning committee, you might find the history to be of interest, and maybe that's a long time ago and it doesn't count. But if we were coming with the entire package that we wanted to alleviate the lot line, turn the building as a courtesy to our neighbor, and put a small addition onto the back, I hope that would be a trade and it would be a positive in our favor. And anyway, that's sort of the history of the house. And I have all fire pictures if anybody wants to see them.
Mr. Wilson, you own lots 1, 2, and 6, and part of lot 7? Is that, I'm confused with what's.
Let me see. There are 4 lots that we own in their entirety. I don't see lot 7. No, we don't own lot 7.
Because the kind of the way it shows 7, it looks like your neighbors to the south and you own part of it. I'm just confused what lot's a lot here.
Sure, I understand it. Lot 1 and 2 were appropriately drawn, as is lot 6. And I think there might be a lot 5, which is the lot where 3/4 of the house resides.
Okay.
I have the lot numbers, but really, and I think in early conversations that Chad had, I'm not sure with whom, might have been with Chuck. He suggested that we go for a lot consolidation before coming to the committee. And given the timing and the time it takes to get the lot consolidation, we put that in process, and we'll certainly complete it after the fact.
Well, the only reason I was asking that, Mr. Wilson, was the fact that if you own all of lot 6 there, it looks like you could add onto that house to add bedrooms on your property without any problem.
You may have
lots of
put
property
remove.
wouldn't be approaching any closer to the property line. And that's why I'm, like I said, I'd love to see you move the present building, but I just don't see adding a bedroom onto it. I'm not that comfortable with that myself.
Well, the reason why, I'm not exactly sure of the question, but let me see if I interpret it right. You're saying we'd have plenty of room to build a garage on lot 6?
I was saying, you were mentioning the fact that you really didn't have a way of adding any rooms onto your present house. And I think there's lots of room on the north side of your house and on your present property to add rooms if you would like.
We could do that. We could do that. Architecturally, it would not work in that house from the design of it. But in theory, the space would work for sure. One of the things that we intentionally did with these 4 lots is that we kept that side yard open for a couple of reasons. One is it's place-based, and the other is it has great sight lines to the lake from the road, and great sight lines from the lake, towards the road. And I grew up at a time when they were all old cottages, and there was a lot of space between them. And everybody was neighborly, and we were allowed to walk in front of people's houses. And, there weren't any fences, and, we've kept it open to preserve those sight lines. So putting a building or an addition over there aesthetically, I think would be a loss to the community. And that's why we'd like to keep the garage where it is. And I understand the issue of being too close to the lot line, but the fact is our neighbor is right there with us. The only thing we'd get if we moved it further into the property is we'd get an alley. And, we don't really need an alley. What we'd like to do is retain as much of the yard as we could.
We have.
Anyway, I'm just sharing my thoughts with you. Just in terms of how we got to this design and this proposal. And I think we put together a team to do the work. Chad's certainly done a lot of work around the lake. Jim has certainly been before the zoning committee quite a bit. Tony Sellers would be doing the drainage and dealing with the water issue. So we have a quality team here, and I can promise you that if we are approved for this, it would be done in a quality fashion and in a way that I hope you'd all be proud of.
One of the questions we have to answer in granting a variance is, question 3 says the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. That's hard for me to answer yes to when I see lots of property that you could move this to or change it to. It's hard for me to answer yes to that question. We have some things that, if I say yes to that, I don't think that's a practical problem in using this property. I'm sorry. I mean, I think it would be nice for you to have extra, but I don't think it's a problem in using property if we grant this or not. And I just want you to know, we have a responsibility in our job as working on the Board of Zoning Appeals and trying to carry out the zoning ordinances. And some of the things we have to answer, a couple of these questions, I wouldn't have a problem saying yes. It's not going to change the property values of anybody next to you. It's not going to change the property values of yours, but the strict application, I don't think it's going to cause any practical difficulties. I think there are ways for you to do that. And I'm just trying to explain that to you, Mr. Wilson. It's not that we don't think that this would be nice for you, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to grant variances to the ordinance if we feel that it's appropriate.
So is the addition the issue? I mean, if they, obviously there's a hardship here. They've got issues with this structure. Okay. Is the addition the issue, or?
For me, the addition, yes. For me, the addition is, I would love to see it moved away from the property line. But to do that and add an addition, if it means you're going to build it on the same one, if we don't allow the thing, then that's what it means. I would like to see you say, okay, well, we didn't get the extension, but I think it's smart to move it over. I would say yes, but if you want to build it on the same footprint, that's a different story, because that's grandfathered in. If you were coming to me, if this building was not here, and you were coming to me and said you're gonna build a garage, it's gonna have 2 bedrooms in it, a bathroom and all that, I would say, there's no way we're gonna approve that. That does not fit in our ordinance. So why should I say, okay, if you move it over here, now we're gonna allow you to put another bedroom on? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying there, but I think yes, I'd love to see it move, but not at the
What if
expense of
the-
adding another bedroom to your garage.
What if there were no interior walls and it was open space?
I'm sorry?
What if there were no interior walls and we were adding additional open space?
Yeah, I'm still against enlarging the size of it. If it's going to be used if it was going to be putting, I think, well, if I could see that it was going to be used for a garage and just a garage, that's a different story. To me, that's an accessory building. Accessory building with living quarters in it is something completely different. Unless there's I mean, we can move to finding of facts, and I might be completely wrong, but as of right now, what we're asking for, or is what the petition says, petition filed by Mr. Eastray on behalf of Lloyd W. Wilson to request variance of development standards to allow construction and rebuilding of an accessory structure with south side yard setback of 2 feet 6 inches from the required 10 feet and a height of 17 feet from the required 10 feet located at 2270 East Shore Lane. Right now, if that's what we're voting and that's what we're going to move to here in a minute is finding of facts. Okay, and I have no idea how the rest of them are going to vote. I'm just telling you how I'm going to vote against this. I have no idea about the rest of the board members because if you want to move it and we go away from the 2 feet 6 inches, I'm not sure exactly that you're going to move the left part at all. You're going to leave that 2 feet 6 inches and just add on. That's what you're proposing. And now I can't speak for the rest of the board, but we are going to have to move to finding the facts here pretty soon. Comments, questions? Yes.
Could I just express one thought very quickly?
Yes.
Regarding the 17 feet, the thing I'd ask you to keep in mind is that that building is at a very low point in the yard, so that it basically accepts all the water coming off of East Shore Lane and coming down from the Henderson property, and then coming down from Jerry, who I'm drawing a blank on his name, 2 doors over. So the water comes at us from both directions. So when we talk about a 1 foot variance, it's from a very low point. We're not talking about a towering structure here. And I just wanted to put that in, not to interrupt the proceeding.
Is the height of the roof now 10 feet?
Is that 10 feet?
I mean, it says from the required 10 feet.
It should say 16, right?
It's 15 feet 3.5 from the original grade to the highest peak right now.
Well, it says from the required 10 feet. We
Right.
don't have a required 10 feet.
No,
height.
it's 16.
16.
That's a typo.
Okay.
I went back and looked at the notices.
But am I correct in saying that if we keep adding the proposed addition, you'll be creating roughly almost 300 square feet of non-pervious?
Yeah, pervious, non-pervious, not an issue.
It's not even close.
Well, let me finish this.
Okay.
If you're creating that more and you're already in a drainage problem as far as water, you're gonna have that much more runoff off your roof that's hitting in your draining area already. I mean,
Well, if you had good grade,
have to control.
yeah, I understand what you're saying, and that makes sense to an extent. But if you, I mean, with the grade issue already, I really don't know how much water's escaping that area ultimately. I don't see that making a difference
Okay, I mean.
in that little bit. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't want to create more problem with the drainage. by
Yeah.
adding it.
Sure, I get that. I get that. I don't foresee that.
Okay, we need to move on.
I would, move
Board
to
members, do
table-
you have any other questions?
I'd move the table it, for now.
You want to move to table it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's been moved that we table this to the December meeting.
Yes, please.
Been moved to table this to this December meeting. I guess we don't have to vote on that. I don't know that we have to, do we? Then we'll just table it to the December meeting.
I should probably have it in my file.
Yeah, yeah. You're, is there any, I guess I'm just gonna ask flat out, is there any interest in the board if we do decide that we could move it some to give us a little bit more square footage?
I would love to see you move it some, but I really don't want to add the square footage. I'm sorry, Jim, but I just don't think adding a bedroom on
Then
there.
what's the advantage of doing it? I guess? Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's just all part of it. That's right. If you're talking about it's a drainage problem, maybe it would be better to move it. I don't know,
We
but
just rebuild it. We're gonna, we can just rebuild it.
I agree.
Rebuild it.
And that's what I said. You can rebuild it on the same footprint.
And then we don't decrease the nonconformity because it doesn't get moved. And I guess I'm trying to negotiate a little bit here, but
I understand.
you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I know exactly
Not encroaching too much on the.
And that's why I was wondering.
Is this the only garage on the property?
Yes,
Do they use it? Is that garage
they
used?
use it primarily, Mr. Wilson can tell us, but I think they use it primarily for golf carts, don't you?
Yeah, there's a golf cart in the back and, some equipment, tools.
You have no driveway to get your car in there.
There's a parking area.
Yeah, there's a
It
parking
opens
area.
up right onto the street, actually, it's right there.
Okay.
But there's a
I
gravel
didn't-
area right there.
Okay.
Could the architect just redesign this whole area, this whole building to accommodate what he wants with all the grandchildren and everything?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Because, you could put a loft in there, you could do a lot of things, because that's pretty good. Was it 30?
28,
30.
28 to 32.
Yeah, that's,
So, well, I guess that's what I was wondering, if there was any interest in us adding a few square feet and trying to redesign it.
Chad, can I ask you a question, and it really doesn't even refer to this, but sort of does. If you remember, I just asked this question because I was there at the time, but when the Irvings built their house, and they had this house, you remember what I'm talking about, Chad?
Mhm.
Weren't you required to add the new house to that because you wouldn't have two primary structures on that property?
I was not involved in the design phase of that, but you could be correct.
I mean, that's the way I remember it, but don't hold me to saying this is factual from my,
Which house was that?
Peter Irving's house.
I don't know.
That's what, 1,500,
2100.
2,100, 2,100 East Shore.
East Shore Lane.
Drive. East Shore
Drive.
Drive.
I just asked that because I remember that before, and it's always been on my mind. Because even on the plan commission, it's been brought up in several other cases.
Right, but then we built 1080 East Shore that had an existing structure that we didn't have to add to. So it's been kind of
Yeah, it's been back to
Excuse me, but it seems to me that this matter's been tabled for next meeting, and I think there's been plenty of discussion that Mr. Eastaday and Mr. Wilson and Mr. Lee can figure out if you want to come back with something different.
I'm sorry.
Okay, very good. Wait, let's,
Go ahead, Mr. Lee.
go ahead, JD.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to remind us that it seems this matter's been tabled, and I think Mr. Wilson and Mr. Easterday and Mr. Leap have heard plenty of discussion on the matter, that they could
Right.
decide if they want to change any kind of petition in December, and perhaps we should move on.
I agree, Mr. Hughley.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you for your time.
I want to thank everybody for their time. I would have preferred a positive answer in this meeting, but I do appreciate your time in considering our proposal, and I hope you'll think better of it or some facsimile in December. After all, it will be the holiday spirit. We'll get this COVID thing behind us and we can really get together.
Okay, let's move on to old business. Do you have any old business for us? Except the one that we've, we're going to be looking at again in December.
Can I insert something kind of happy?
I'm sorry?
I said, can I insert something kind of happy that's old business?
Sure.
We had that long discussion about the food truck.
Yes.
And she moved the food truck to a commercial property, and actually stopped by there just to see how it was going. She said she has 6 times the business that she used to have when she was in her old spot.
Well,
So it worked out.
it worked out because the guy that has the axe place asked her to. He's the one that approached her because he wanted people to be able to eat when they came to throw axes.
The thing is, it started out tough and it ended up really, I think at the end, it was a nice story.
Yeah.
I had that situation about that, though, by her moving it up there. I mean, I know it's on commercial property to be allowed, but she got special use for the property on Mill Street. And now she's up there, but she doesn't have to have a special use permit to have it on that property, but she have to have anything certified by the town. People do that, or can, if anybody bring a food cart and put it on commercial property along?
Well, they've allowed it out at the.
It's a health department.
It's a health
department.
It's the Mercer County Health Department. The health
She's
department's paid
certified.
for.
I know the health department.
Yeah.
You're asking the
As
town.
part of the town allowing
So,
it to be put anywhere.
Yeah, we've allowed that in commercial parking lots for a while. Without anything other than the health department certification.
Okay. I was my only question. It wasn't so sour, no, you're happy.
thanks, Barry. You ruined it for me.
New business.
No, not at all.
Hey, Mr. Adams,
Yes.
I just want to say something on old business real quick. I was a little concerned that the record shows that none of my participation in the last 2 months or, September, since when I've been doing Microsoft Teams as a result of the exposure that I have at school and trying to, prevent that from coming into the meeting room, that none of my votes have been recorded as valid or as part of the record. I have all the notes. I have all the, things that I filled out each time. And so is that true, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, no, you're correct. It's not in the book. And I was going to suggest that we get you some blank, especially if you're going to continue doing this, blank finding of fact thing, have you fill it out, sign it, and return it.
I have all those for all the cases that we've had, because I printed blank ones. They've been signed and dated.
If you can get so this town hall, we'll put them in the records in the big book here with each one. That would be appreciated.
Thank you.
And to help you on your thoughts, JD, knowing that this is being recorded and certified, and you have been voting on the recording, so you have definitely been counted. I just know it hasn't showed up in the paper yet because of the pandemic thing, but am I right, John?
Oh, I was just gonna ask JD, do you mean your votes aren't in the minutes, or what do you mean?
I
No,
think his.
I don't mind them not being in the minutes. I just, when it was discussed today about the Burns case, it was not a 4-1 vote. It was determined as a 3-1 vote. And, you know, that's 4 votes. I was at that meeting. I was present and voted. And so
Did you vote again?
Oh, right. That was, Jim probably said that because I scanned those to him, JD.
Okay.
Same thing. I scanned him the findings of fact. So
Right.
yeah, that would explain
He
that.
was basing that on the findings of fact, not on the minutes.
Sorry about that. Yes,
Thank
if you, JD, if you want to email those to Karen and I, we'll make sure those get in there.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I just let you know you're counted and you're appreciated.
Yes, we know you're here.
It sounded a little negative on that
Yeah,
side.
I know.
When I heard it, I said, no.
Mr. DeWitt, do we have any new business to discuss?
No, I don't have any new business. The only thing I would like to add is I really appreciate the passion that everybody brings to this group, and hope that never changes.
Thank you.
Hey, Chuck,
Yes.
this is Barry. I was not criticizing you in any way. I was just trying to point facts to
No,
the
no,
homeowner.
we're all good. I'm as passionate as everybody else is. Okay. So forgive me.
I just let you know, I wasn't pointing fingers, I was just letting you know where the information didn't come from, so.
Did you get a
I
copy?
apologize if I made you this way.
And it'll come up with, I did let her know that the cook thing would not be on tonight's agenda, but. Okay, next meeting necessary is going to be on December 17th, and it's obviously going to be necessary. Any further things, any further questions? Okay, not this meeting is adjourned.
Night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
JD, thanks.